What's up with the moon? It is way less dense than the Earth. The material predates the Earth, and yet it's supposed to have come from the Earth itself, from some sort of asteroid impact, so that doesn't make sense. There were reverberations when the lunar lander hit it, both in Apollo 12 and in Apollo 13. You had ringing.
And when meteoroids strike it, same thing. While those Apollo in-place seismometers were on the moon,
Yes.
I think for 3 or 4 years, NASA was able to gather data, and yes, it shows that the moon has a long vibrational train.
Yes.
In the after like 10 times or more that of, say, the Earth.
You have uranium-236 and chromium and titanium on the moon. These are sort of either rare,
high refractory metals.
It's very strange. And then it feels almost like, this perfect ball, and it orbits in this perfect way where you never see the dark side of the moon.
If you ask people, and I do this just for the fun, I'll say to people, does the moon rotate on its axis? And most people go. And they can't conceptualize in any way that allows them to even answer the question. Does it? Well, yes. Okay, it does. Okay. Or no. Well, let's say, because most people now, unlike our ancestors of long ago, don't pay much attention to the moon. Our ancestors all over the ancient world paid obsessive attention to the moon. They built huge structures and monuments dedicated to observing the motions of the moon. And they did this all over the world. Why? Why were they so interested in the moon? Why were they so intrigued with the moon that they would create these large astronomy observatories that would allow them to track, for example, the 18.6-year lunar cycle between maximum rising and setting, minimum rising and setting, which takes it takes 18.6 years to go through the full cycle. And to put it into a very, what I would think of as kind of a comprehensible motion, is you've got a minimum rising, a minimum setting, a maximum rising, a maximum setting. And it goes like this. Does that make sense what I'm doing? It goes maximum, like maximum rise, minimum set. Maximum set, minimum rise. And it oscillates like that back and forth. It takes 18.6 years, give or take a few days, to complete that full cycle. There's a place that we'll go to at some point in Colorado called Chimney Rock. We can pull up a slide of it a little bit later if you'd like. It's two natural pillars. Huge pillars are 1,000 feet above the valley floor. And they're connected by a ridge. And you can go up that ridge, and where the ridge sort of flattens out before you get to these two huge pinnacles of rock, there's the remnants of an ancient structure there, an ancient kiva that would have been built by the Chacoan people. And this was one of the Chacoan outliers, part of the whole Chacoan civilization that was pretty much covered the 10,000 square miles of the San Juan Basin in New Mexico, whose hub was Chaco Canyon. And there was a whole series of outliers that were places of observation, high pinnacle points that would have been probably used as a communication system. We can pull some of this up and I can show you some of these slides. You'll kind of see how it worked. But at Chimney Rock, the remains of a kiva are there, and if you position yourself at the right location within that kiva, which is circular, you peer through those two pinnacle rocks, and it marks that position where you will see every 18.6 years, you will see the moon rising in between those two rocks. And that's coming up later this year. So I'm thinking a little trip out there, and the park, it's a national monument, I believe. The Park Service that governs it is going to open it up so people can actually hike up the ridge and get in that position and see the event.
Let's go.
I think it's...
Let's go.
I think...
But I won't let you go, Randall. What's up with the moon? It's really strange. Also the more dense material on the moon is above the less dense material, which is the opposite of the Earth, and it's similar to like a digging or excavation site.
Well, here's
And so, like, actually, the thing that got me onto this is there's a remote viewer named Ingo Swann. Who was
yes, I've
part
heard of him.
And he wrote a book called Penetration, and he was part of the CIA's psychic spy program called
Right.
Stargate. And the latter half of the book, Penetration, is dedicated to his thoughts on the moon.
Okay.
And he thought that the moon was a hollow spaceship. And there are other legends that involve the moon being a hollow artificial satellite or spaceship around the Earth. And there's actually a Zulu legend that the moon brought us out of the Younger Dryas, and
Oh,
that
yeah?
it made the climate stable on Earth. So what say
Well,
you?
the moon absolutely does help to stabilize the climate. Mm-hmm. That's a well-known fact. In fact, I have a whole book up there on that.
And you've seen evidence of various gaseous activity on the moon that's sort of unexplainable?
Oh, yeah, the lunar transient phenomena is hundreds of examples of the moon outgassing carbon dioxide, outgassing water vapor, things like that. So anomalous lights, things, it really looks like there's some kind of activity on the moon right now. I don't know the explanation for it. I don't know why carbon dioxide is being outgassed from the moon. But carbon dioxide seems to suggest, well, carbon dioxide you associate with plants, with vegetation, water vapor.
Well, you know,
coming out of the moon.
The moon's super weird. So Apollo 10, right? It took off from the moon and it rang like a bell. And NASA became very confused. Then in Apollo 11, they put seismometers in the moon to measure this effect. They intentionally crashed the booster, the first stage of the lunar module in Apollo 11 back onto the moon, and it rings like a bell for 3 hours.
3 hours.
So they're like, what the hell's going on here? And it turns out that if you excavate, if you dig on the moon, lower sediment layers on the moon actually are newer than higher sediment layers. So it's the exact inverse, and it actually pattern matches to an excavation site. So you think that there might be a little camp out from this past civilization
I don't
going
know.
on the moon?
But in the spirit of the outrageous hypothesis, let's consider it.
Okay, I like that. And so why haven't we gone back? 1969 to 1972, we went on all these cool missions. You had the NASA Saturn program, the Apollo programs, and we don't seem to be able to go back. You even have NASA admins saying we lost the technology. Like that's not even like a controversial conspiratorial thing to say.
Right,
The
well,
more conspiratorial thing would be that was a hoax or whatever.
The more prosaic explanation is that Nixon decided to pull the plug on the Apollo program because the Vietnam War was costing us so much money and we were going into debt that he didn't feel like we had enough money to continue the program. So they decommissioned the whole Saturn rocket fleet, which was really dumb and stupid, but that's what they did. And so, you could make the argument, well, the Vietnam War won out over the Apollo program. There was probably more to it than that, but I don't know what that would be unless something was found that, However,
what might have been found?
I don't know.
And there are civilizations pre-moon that talk about the moon not existing, and then there's Sumerians talk about the pre-moon civilizations. And so, what's up?
That I don't think that means what people think it means, because here's why. I think that it means something very interesting. But obviously, if you had the moon arriving into Earth orbit, during the time that humans would be here, the arrival of the moon into Earth's orbit would be an extraordinary event, and it would be profoundly catastrophic.
So how do you think the moon formed?
That's part of the mystery.
Come on, Randall.
Well, see, I don't necessarily have all the answers on that, but
Yeah,
I
we
will
got
say
something.
this. As far as the moon, the structure of the moon, you're right that the moon is much less dense, is slightly more than half as dense as the Earth. So the interesting thing about the moon is if you get enough mass together, the gravitational attraction will overcome the resistance to deformation of the material. What that means is that if you have a small object Like say for example, an astronomical object like Phobos or Deimos, the moons of Mars.
Yeah.
They're not spherical. There's not enough mass there to overcome the rigidity of the material.
Hey, American Alchemy fans. After years of trying pretty much every shaving product under the sun, I finally found something that I love. It's called House of Atlas. I use it every day. House of Atlas's razor kit has raised my grooming game in the biggest way. The razor leaves you with the smoothest shave you'll ever get. They have precision shave cream, calming aftershave. Seriously, I don't know what they're doing with this blade, but it leaves my skin feeling silky smooth. With its 5 US-made stainless steel blades and that high-performance serum strip, it glides through my facial hair for an incredibly close, comfortable shave. They also have one of the most luxurious feeling and precision guiding shave creams and a very calming aftershave. Their shave cream has a thick, rich, special formula that gives me a clear guide for an even shave, and the aftershave leaves my skin feeling cool and refreshed without any of that old school sting that you might get from other products. Plus, and this might be the coolest thing of all, the kit comes with an epic magnetic storage hook. And now, for a limited time, they're offering 15% off your first order when you purchase any razor kit in the before and after set. This includes the precision shave cream and calming aftershave. Use code Jesse, Jesse, at houseofatlas.com. That's HOUSEOFATLAS.com with promo code Jesse, Jesse, for 15% off your new razor kit and before and after set. So stop wasting money and time on shaving products that don't look good, aren't effective, and cost way too much. Visit houseofatlas.com today. Trust me, you'll love it as much as I do.
Mm-hmm. There's not enough mass there that the gravity attraction, the internal gravity, can overcome the resistance of the material and cause it to deform. Somewhere between, say, the moons of Mars and the moons of the Earth, you will get enough mass where it does overtake, the gravity will overwhelm the rigidity of the material. It will deform into the shape which requires the least energy to maintain, which is a sphere. The mass of the moon is sufficient to do that, yet it hasn't done that. How do we know that? Well, there's a number of ways we know that. The most prominent way we know that is the fact that there is 2 moments of inertia in the moon. Let's see, grab like one of those wooden compasses off the top right there. I think, yeah, one of those. Let's see, will that work? Is there another, let's see, there should be, is there anything else up there tubular?
Good pen.
That'll work. Okay, so now I'm gonna hold this pen as if it's locked into a single moment of inertia that coincides with its center of mass. Mm-hmm. Okay, now what I want you to do is try to grab each end of the pen and try to rotate it. No, rotate it in the horizontal plane. See, you're going to easily overcome my resistance. I'm going to resist, and you see I can't. Okay, now rotate it in the same plane. 1 moment of inertia, 2 moments of inertia. Okay, what you are, okay, so here is a spherically, radially symmetrical object. Let's imagine it is a sphere, and this is an axis, and you are Earth's gravity field. So, again, rotate it. Very little resistance, right? But now you're Earth's gravity field, and there's 2 moments of inertia. So, what's happened there is the moon is locked into Earth's gravity field in a 1-to-1 coupling between the spin of the moon on its axis and its revolution about the Earth. 1-to-1 spin-orbit coupling. The moon has sufficient mass and low density that it should have deformed into the state of least energy, which is a sphere.
Why hasn't it done that, Randall?
Why hasn't it done that?
What do you think?
Because there's obviously 2 moments of inertia.
So why, and how do you explain the two moments of inertia if it's a natural object?
Well, we have to come up with I'm not saying it's not a natural object. What I'm saying, though, is that the laws of physics as we know it don't seem to be applying here. And if there's a natural explanation, I don't know what it is.
Do you have any unnatural theories?
Not really. I'm not ready to go into some of the, that the moon is an artificial object.
Okay.
I am willing to consider that the moon has been geoengineered.
Okay. And how would it have been geoengineered?
Well, by a civilization with the technology advanced enough that they would be able to.
Do you think Atlantis geoengineered it?
Well, now you're it's very speculative, but now we get into the question of could there have been a civilization in the remote past that had technologies that we currently don't know about? And I think the answer is yes, that is a plausible hypothesis that is not warranted by just summarily dismissing.
How would they have geoengineered the moon?
Well, if you look at the schemes for building lunar bases, have you ever looked at any of NASA's ideas for building lunar bases?
No.
I should pull up something here. If I've got it handy, I will pull it up. Basically, the main problem with building a colony on the moon or any kind of a facility on the moon is cosmic radiation.
Right.
So how do you solve the problem of cosmic radiation to which you are going to be subject on the surface of the moon?
You need some protective shielding, maybe a magnetic protective
You
shielding.
could, which means you're thinking immediately something like one of the schemes is, and if I can find it here, I'll pull it up. One of the schemes is a dome-like structure.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes, you could do that. Or what would be another possibility? Go underground.
Oh, so there you go. So it could be this hollow structure. Interesting.
Hollow is an oversimplification.
Okay. So there may be hollow parts of it.
Now I think you're getting onto the...
Well, there's some people who are high up at NASA who have said there are hollow parts of the moon, and that's the only explanation for it.
Yeah. I mean, this has actually been known since the Apollo days. Has been speculated. It was Gordon McDonald, I think was his name.
That's right, Gordon McDonald.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the one who first said that it's more like a hollow sphere.
That's right. And there's a famous space advisor, I think he was NASA affiliated, to Eisenhower named Gordon McDonald, who said the only way that
I've read his work.
The only way that the moon makes any sense is if it's hollow.
But that's an oversimplified model. Like if you picture a basketball that has an outer shell, but completely empty inside.
It has maybe compartments or something. Do you think there are Atlantean survivors within the moon?
He says with a grin, a sly grin.
You already said yes on my show, and 800,000 people watched that.
Did I say that?
You said,
well,
you go, there's a loaded question, Jesse, and then you go, well, yes.
Do you believe that there are survivors of ancient Atlantis that are among us, perhaps with underwater bases or bases on the moon and advanced technology?
Now there's the loaded question, Jesse. I will just say very provisional yes.
Well, let's put it this way. If there were ancient cultures, whether it was Atlantis or not, that's a separate question. I think that questioning the existence of Atlantis is definitely valid. If we go through and we take line by line our primary source for information on Atlantis, which is Plato's two dialogues, and we actually break it down line by line, we look at the multiple translations, we look at even going back to the original Greek to determine some of the possible alternative translations of some of the words.
So I think we can do that, but that's a conversation you've had with other people, and I feel like you have sort of evidence that is, in the form of these sort of archaeological ruins that will always be hotly contested. and it's sort of hard to prove that that was Atlantis because the actual survivors have been washed away. And then you have all these crazy UFO reports, and if there are any survivors that are on the moon or in underwater bases or anything like that, I almost feel like, especially given the current zeitgeist, that might be a more productive inroad into the Atlantis conversation.
You know, I like to think outrageously sometimes in the spirit of outrageous hypotheses. You know, William R. Davis, who was the founding father of the science of geomorphology, back in the 20s, I believe it was, excoriated his colleagues for being overly conservative in their thinking and not willing to consider new ideas. And he wrote a very famous paper called, which you might want to read. I bet you could find it as a PDF form on Google. It's called The Value of Outrageous Hypotheses.
Love that.
Yeah. So in the spirit of outrageous hypotheses, why don't we conjecture that given the at least 150 to 200,000 years that we modern humans have been on this earth, that consistent with a lot of the myths, flight was not discovered back in by the Wright brothers, but was rediscovered by, here's the perspective that I kind of consider. If we look at, the dominance of just feudalism, of subsistence farming, that was up until the 1800s and the scientific enlightenment, followed by the Industrial Revolution. That was pretty much 99% of the Earth's population. When my grandparents were born in the 1890s, the primary mode of transportation, aside from rail, was foot, horse, mule, ships, of course, but obviously nobody had, the first automobiles, I guess, were just showing up in the mid-1890s. But then when I was born, there was no computers. We had no presence in space. If you look at how far and fast we've come scientifically in the last 200 years, and then if you were to think that, what if a cataclysm wiped out our modern civilization? And we had archaeologists coming and digging up looking for, prehistory 10,000 years prior. Well, would they find any evidence that we were even here? And the answer is, it depends on the severity and the intensity and magnitude of these events. Now, if we start talking about the Younger Dryas, I think we can safely state that the Younger Dryas was a global catastrophe. And it involved multiple factors, all of which would have done their part very effectively to erase any kind of civilization that might have existed, at least anything that might have looked like ours. Let's put it this way, if the Younger Dryas events were to be repeated now, 10,000 years from now, archaeologists would have a hard time finding any evidence that we were ever even here. So what I'm getting at is that I think that you can interpret the evidence that there is a strong case for the existence of Atlantis. Now, if we look at what happened with Ancient Apocalypse, Graham Hancock's show, it got attacked on multiple fronts. It's all the establishment coming out, and of course, if you dissect their attacks on the show, there's no substance to them. Mm-hmm. It's just name calling. It's every logical fallacy in the book, right? But if you go back to the original accounts, there's nothing there that's really so implausible that it couldn't have existed in some form or another.
Well, the objections people have are, it was told that sort of a mythos festival, right, in the Timaeus and Critaeus account. And so, there was a question of like how true the actual telling was. And then the other sort of argument is they were supposed to have fought a war, I think, against Athens. And Athens wasn't around, 9,000 years prior.
You've got a whole bunch of assumptions.
Yeah.
If you go back to, the late Ice Age times, you go back to the times that Plato is talking about. Mm-hmm. And his date is very interesting. 9,000 years before Solon's exile to Egypt, right, which occurred in 600 BC.
So the 9,600 BC, which is the end of the Younger Dryas.
Right,
Yeah.
precisely, the end of the Younger Dryas and Meltwater Pulse 1b.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. If you are going through something, anything, I always think talking about it helps. I've also always believed that taking care of your mental well-being is as essential as staying physically fit, especially when life keeps you on the go. For me, it's interviews, projects, and travel. Sometimes you just need to blow off some steam. I've seen firsthand how a solid support system can transform your day to day. Traditional therapy costs anywhere from $100 to $250 per session. It often takes a lot of time to book the sessions. It's hard to know who's a quality therapist. BetterHelp makes weekly therapy perfectly accessible with a flat weekly fee that saves you a lot of time and money. You get instantly matched up with an amazing therapist, and you can vet them based on their track record. What I really appreciate is how easy it is to connect with one of BetterHelp's over 30,000 licensed therapists. No waiting rooms, no rigid scheduling, just guidance and support delivered online. Whether you're tackling everyday stress, managing anxiety, or simply looking to build better coping skills, don't let these things fester or build up. BetterHelp provides a straightforward, affordable way to get the care you deserve. Your well-being is worth it. It's the most important thing in your life, even more important than aliens. So visit betterhelp.com/alchemypod today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/alchemypod. ALCHEMYPOD. After you sign up, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. That would go a long way.
Now, to me, that is quite an amazing coincidence that you have a very rapid pulse of sea level rise. At the same time, Plato is saying that there were islands in the Atlantic that sank due to seismic events. And one of the things I've done is gone in and studied the marine geology and oceanography of the Atlantic Ocean basin, and it's right there. There is overwhelming evidence of major subsidence on the floor of the Atlantic Ocean, particularly concentrated along the mid-Atlantic ridge.
You don't happen to have any slides around this, do you, Randall?
Well, I do.
Really?
I actually do, yeah.
Should we get into it?
I'd love to, you know.
While you're pulling that up, Randall, do you think that there's any sort of sacred geometry about the human body that allows it to
Oh, yeah.
tap in? What is that?
Well, it's primarily the golden section, also known as the divine proportion, where also known as the extreme and mean ratio, which is basically, well, this right here actually is a compass that demonstrates that ratio, where the ratio of the small segment to the large segment is exactly the same as the ratio of the large segment to the whole.
You know what else displays that? The moon.
How so?
I believe that the moon is 1/400th the size of the sun or something, or what? You tell me. What is it? It's the distance between the.
You have a proportional relationship between diameters and distance.
Yes.
The sun is 400 times
Yes.
larger than the moon
Yes.
and 400 times farther away.
Okay, so what's up with that?
There we go.
That's
I mean, what is up with that?
I don't know.
I've been thinking about that for decades.
That's what you're here to tell me,
Like,
Randall.
what is up with that?
This year, upgrade your system to a workspace that keeps your team from shattering across dimensions. If you've ever tried to schedule a meeting across 5 time zones and 6 platforms, you know the absolute horror of losing people to the ether. It's a single streamlined command center for calls, notes, transcripts, chats, even AI summaries. An all-in-one shared reality, yours. No vanishing, no fusing into calendars, just your team, fully entangled and synced across time zones, timelines, even caffeine levels. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/Jesse. That's QUO.com/Jesse. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers.